You're watching the video sermon podcast of First Baptist Church in Marble Falls, Texas. For almost 130 years, FBCMF has served the Marble Falls and the greater Highland Lakes area faithfully through children's programs, youth activities, and adult discipleship. We invite you to join us each and every Sunday at 9 and 10:30 a.m. for deep fellowship, rich worship, and a spirit-filled message. For those who find themselves unable to attend on a Sunday morning, we stream those services. Simply visit fbcmf.org/live during either of our service times to view it. Those sermons are then archived on YouTube for on-demand viewing and sharing. Never miss an archived sermon or video posted to our YouTube channel by subscribing to it at youtube.com/fbcmftube. For more information about our church and to hear an audio-only version of this sermon, please visit us online at fbcmf.org.
Well, Jesus did come to be the Messiah, and he came to be your Messiah as well. In the 18th century, a composer named George Friedrich Handel wrote and created a piece of music entitled Messiah. Now, our choir is going to sing it on Friday and Saturday this next week. And men, I know this, that for most of you, opera is not your favorite genre of music. My old preaching professor, Dr. Shields, used to say, boys, I don't like opera music. And he said, I'll tell you why. When I see somebody stabbed, I want to see them bleed and not sing about it. And I sympathize some with that. I kind of agree. But Messiah follows a theological story that gives hope to everyone in the world. I've had the opportunity to see Handel's grave in Westminster Abbey in London. Here's a picture of the statue right next to his grave. He's holding a score from the music Messiah, and the piece of that he is holding is the part of the song, I Know That My Redeemer Liveth, and he holds that there. Messiah is called an oratorio. Oratorio. It's very similar to an opera, but it's different. An opera comes with a large set, and it comes with costumes, but an oratorio does not. An oratorio's main difference, though, is this, that operas sing about all kinds of things. An oratorio picks out stories from the Old Testament and characters from the Old Testament, and they begin to put all of that and weave it into music. And so they used these characters to create a musical plot. And so when you hear Messiah, it's called an oratorio because it kind of follows that. But it does something that none of the other oratorios ever did, and that is it attempts to take the Old Testament prophecy that there's going to be a Messiah who would come, and that is fulfilled in the person of Jesus Christ. It picks Jesus as its hero. And none of the other ones had ever attempted that before. And when Messiah was first performed in Dublin, Ireland in 1742, the crowd just went wild. I mean, people loved it. They were showing up in droves to hear about it. And this is what some of the people in the newspapers and the media, this is what they were printing on Facebook in 1742 and everything about Messiah after they heard it. Here's some of it. One person said, "It is the opinion of the best judges that Messiah far surpasses anything of that nature which has been performed in this or any other kingdom." Pretty big. All right, what's the next one? Here we have another one. One person said this, "Words are wanting to express the exquisite delight that it afforded the admiring crowded audience. The sublime, meaning peaceful, the grand and the tender, adapted to the most elevated, majestic, and moving words conspired to transport court and charm the ravished heart and ear. As I know it's not a big deal. Y'all say that about my sermons every week, and so it's not a huge deal, right? But they loved it. You can tell, can't you? They really did. There's something else, though, that's very interesting about Messiah, and that is that God used it in a way that he really didn't use other pieces of music during the time. Hospitals and orphanages and prisons, they would go to him and they would say, Handel, our little hospital can't afford all of the things that we're doing. Would you mind? Would you just mind to bring Messiah and perform it for a crowd that will give money to our hospital? And he said, yes, prisons would come, particularly debtors' prisons, people who were put in prison because they owed somebody money. And they would come to Handel and say, we have these people and their moms and dads, and they were put in prison. They're not going to be with their families because they owe this money. Why don't you help us, Handel? Could you perform Messiah so that these people can get out of prison? And we'll pay their debt for them. Could you do that? And he did it almost every single time. And in the end, Messiah ended up being performed more for causes of charity, for great causes like orphans and hospitals and schools and things like that. It was performed more for all that than it ever was for profit. And God used Messiah to make an enormous difference. One gentleman commented on it in saying this, that Messiah has fed the hungry, clothed the naked, fostered the orphan more than any single production in this or any other country. That's pretty awesome, isn't it? I love that. And one time after a showing of Messiah, a guy goes up to Handel and he says, oh, I was so entertained by that. And it's reported that Handel lowered his head and he said, if all I did was entertain, that's not what I wanted to do. My intention was not to entertain, but to make people better. Better. I think that's why our church is doing it in the end. You know, we're putting on Messiah, not so that all of you can have a nice Christmas. That's not the reason we did Scrooge last year either, or a Christmas Post several years ago. The reason that we do all these things is not so that somebody can come in, hear it, and say, oh, what a nice season, what a nice time this is. No, the reason that we do it is so that people will become more devoted to Jesus Christ. That's the reason that we're trying to put all of it on. It's the same reason that Handel said, I created all this to make people better so that they'll know Jesus Christ more deeply. And so during these sermons called Messiah and Me, I hope for all of us that we're going to experience this, that experience the biblical text in a way that you feel it in your soul. And you don't just understand it with your mind, but you experience it emotionally and you feel it deeply. And the music is going to help us to do that. What does it mean for you to have a Messiah, a Savior? What does it mean for our entire world to have a Messiah? I read to you a moment ago Isaiah chapter 40, 1 through 5. Now, most scholars feel that Isaiah is broken into three different historical parts, and I believe this as well. I believe that you have Isaiah chapter 1 through 39. And then you have in another historical moment, Isaiah chapters 40, which we started reading this morning, all the way through chapter 55. And then I believe that chapters 56 through 66 were written during another moment in time. And here's how they break down. Isaiah chapter 1 through 39 all happens before the Babylonians come in and destroy all of Israel and carry everybody off. And when they have been carried off into Babylon, and they're there for 70 years, right before they're ready to leave and go back to their homeland, that's where Isaiah 40 begins to speak. And then Isaiah 56 all the way through 66 talks about what happens when they get back to their land. And because of this, it is always appropriate to stop reading. If you're ever studying Isaiah, if you're ever looking at it in Sunday school, if you're a Sunday school teacher or anything like that, or you study the Word of God, it's always appropriate to stop reading Isaiah after chapter 39 and don't just move fast into chapter 40, but take a moment and pause and really consider everything that the people of Israel had been through when Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians just came in and demolished them. You don't need to move so fast because there is 70 historical years between these two chapters, between chapter 39 and chapter 40. Chapter 39 ends with Isaiah telling King Hezekiah that the Babylonians are going to come in, and you just finished walking them through all of your treasury and all of the temple, and I want you to know that the Babylonians are going to come in, and they're going to carry off all of your treasure. They're going to plunder all of it. You're not going to have a single dime left. They're going to go through the temple, and all these wonderful things that we have in the temple, they're going to steal it, take it all, and then they're going to destroy the temple, and then all of our people, they're going to carry off. This is Isaiah at the end of chapter 39. He said, King, they're going to carry off your sons and your daughters, and they're going to make eunuchs out of your sons, and your family is going to be decimated. And then it ends. The appropriate thing to do is to mourn at this point before we move into chapter 40. The appropriate thing to do is to shed a tear because that's what they were doing. But here's the thing. In chapter 39, and right after, when the Babylonians came in, the first thing they do is they lay siege to the city of Jerusalem. You know what happens when they lay siege to a city? Everyone inside of it begins to starve to death. And the starvation was huge, and people inside begins to have disease, and they can't get any medicine because they can't get outside of their city. They can't import anything, no food, and so they begin to starve. They begin to have disease, and finally, the walls begin to come down, and they're sending everybody that's still alive because the soldiers have already died out in the fields, and they start sending everybody to go and fight. And you know, young boys, well, I'm just 13 years old. You got to go fight. Everybody dying, and nothing worked. The Babylonians came in the year 586 BC, and they destroyed everything in Israel. All of the houses, all of the temple. And so people were left without any country, without any way of life, and without any culture either. And all of their hope was gone because their children were gone, and their past was destroyed because their parents and grandparents were destroyed as well. I'm talking everything is annihilated. Imagine if there was no United States of America, we lost it completely, and people lost their homes, and they took away our way of life. There were no churches. They marched people to the ends of the earth. We were taken everywhere, and the few people who were left here were people who were destitute and poor, and everything in life was totally changed. Now, in the book of Lamentations, the prophet Jeremiah is reflecting on all of the destruction that's happened, and he's just so sad about all of it, obviously, as we would be. And so this is what he writes. My eyes fail from weeping so much. I am in torment. My heart is poured out on the ground because my people are all destroyed. Because children and infants, they walk the streets of the city looking for food, and they say to their moms, they say, Mommy, is there any food? And then they faint like wounded men in the streets. And these children, their lives ebb away from them as their mothers hold them in their arms. I'm telling you, it was a bad, bad situation. There's death everywhere, and there is absolutely no hope. And that's what it was like for all of the people that were left in Jerusalem after Nebuchadnezzar left. But you know what? It wasn't any better for the people that he carried off in chains and marched them 2,000 miles from Jerusalem up the Fertile Crescent all the way over to what is modern-day Iraq, around Baghdad. And he marched those poor people after they had lost and been destroyed in battle from their homes. And he marched them all the way over there. And he took some of the best and brightest young men, made them into eunuchs, made them serve him. It was humiliating. It was painful. It was horrible. And they didn't have, and they took away their names. You know, the names Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, those weren't their Hebrew names. Those were their Babylonian names. Those names were given to those three boys based on the gods of Baal, not on the great God of Yahweh. And they lost everything. And they're there in Babylon, and they're just defeated, and there is no hope for them. And so the families were separated, or they were dead, and they were forced to give up all of their customs and adapt to the customs of the Babylonian Empire. And so here is what, if Jeremiah wrote in Lamentations what it was like for the people left in Jerusalem, the psalmist in Psalm 137 writes about what it's like for all the people that had been marched away and put into exile, and this is how he talks about it. He says, by the rivers of Babylon, and so if Babylon is Iraq, what are the main rivers in Iraq? The Tigris and the Euphrates. So they're sitting next to the Tigris and the Euphrates. By the rivers of Babylon, we sat and we cried and we cried, and we remembered Zion. Meaning Zion is Jerusalem. Zion's their old town. We remembered what it was like. And there on the big poplar trees next to the river, it says we hung our harps and we walked away, meaning we don't have a song to sing anymore. We're finished. There is no more joy. We have lost everything. We are an annihilated emotionally and in every other way people. We hung our harps on the trees, we lower our heads in disgrace, and we walk away leaving all of our music behind us. And at that moment it says, and our captors come and they meet us in this place and they torment us, saying to us, sing to us your songs of Zion, your joyous songs. Sing to us. It's like saying, come on, all of you Jews, dance for us. When you went before the temple and you danced and you sang all of your songs, give us one of those songs that you sang in church a long time ago after they had lost church, see? It'd be like going to a slave a long time ago and the slave masters saying to us, sing to us your spiritual songs of hope, and then laughing at them and poking fun at them. What a horrible thing to mock somebody like that, and yet that's what they went through over and over again. Now what we need to understand in this moment, this is all of Isaiah 1 through 39. When it ends in chapter 39, this is the reality and that's the situation. There is no hope, and they couldn't fix it for themselves. The people in Israel couldn't say, hey, let's rise up and fight. They didn't have a way to do that. There was no way that they can fix it. They needed help. They needed somebody. They were at the mercy of their captors. Now, let me ask you at this point. After Isaiah 39, if you were to write some kind of a song to describe the emotion and the feeling of that depressed situation, what kind of song would you write? Probably a dirge. You'd probably write a song that reflected the emotion of the moment. You would write it in what is called minor keys. You would not write it in major. You would write it in minor. Because a minor key reflects gloom, it reflects difficulty, it reflects reflective kind of thought. Major reflects joy, and it reflects hope. And I want to show you the difference between these two things. Dory, are you here anywhere, bro? Could you come out and show us the difference between minor and major just for a second? Help us to kind of feel that.
So this would be minor. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far. Grace will lead me home.
Do you hear how you recognize the song? It's Amazing Grace. It's a song that we sing with excitement usually. It's yes, grace is awesome, but he sang it in a minor key, and you feel like crying, you know? It's sad when he sings it in that. Sing it the right way and put it back in major for us, Dory.
Sing it the right way.
I like that. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Now, it is cool. Same song, just a different key. Now, Dory taught this to me last week, that you take a chord like the E chord, and you play that E chord in E minor. You're going to play E, and then G natural, and then B, and that is minor. So play that chord together. Okay. Is that the major or the minor? That's the minor. So, and Dory said that if you take that G natural and you just move it up barely 1/2 step to G sharp, now you get the major chord. And so play that chord together, Dory.
Okay, so here's your minor. And we're just going to lift that one note.
Yeah, and then play the chord. And it's happy. That's major. Major is exciting. Now I want to take the point a little bit further to you. You can take a lot of different songs and change them in this regard. You could take a song that is scary and sad or terrifying, and you can play it in major instead of minor, and it changes everything. For instance, I'm going to take the theme song to the horror movie Halloween. And you've seen that show, and so we're going to play, Bubba, play the theme song to Halloween just for a moment. And this is in minor for a moment. Play it in minor. This is original. Scary, isn't it? You don't even have to have the movie going. It's pretty terrifying. Now, all we're going to do is we're going to take those same chords and we're going to move them up 1/2 step, and we're going to make them major instead of minor. So play the song. This is a theme song from Halloween. It's just played in major instead of minor. Listen to this. Sounds like Chariots of Fire to me. Right? Yeah. You want to, I tell you, you listen to that and watch the movie, you could watch it alone in the dark on Friday 13th and you'll laugh through the whole show. Because the music changes all of it so dramatically. Now, what does that have to do with the people of Israel? It has this: their life after Isaiah 39 was in minor, not major. Their life was in minor. The music of their life brings you to tears. I sat by the rivers of Babylon and I wept. And this is where Isaiah 39 leaves us. It leaves us in minor. It leaves us with the feeling of, that's what it does. And in that moment, they are in need of something to restore the major. They're in need of some kind of Messiah, a Savior who might restore to them the ability to sing joyously, to give them back the major that they used to have. Now, Handel thought about that, And he considered that the people of Israel, after chapter 39 in Isaiah, they weren't the only people in need of something to restore the major, that they're not the only ones who were living in minor. He looked all around his own culture, and he realized that the people in England and in London were living in minor as well. During that era, there is a philosophical phenomenon called the Enlightenment, and it came in, and the Enlightenment taught this, that because of people's ability to reason and because of our amazing intellect, that we're able to fix everything, that we're self-sufficient and we don't need anything because we have this ability to be reasonable and to figure everything out. And because of that, what people started to think is, well, anything that is unreasonable, we'll just kind of throw out. And so let's throw out a lot of the Bible, because it certainly is unreasonable that God would come and be man. That's impossible. That's not reasonable. You know, science doesn't hold up to that for sure. That's crazy. Also, the idea that somebody who is dead could be brought back to life, that's way not reasonable. Throw that out as well. And they became so self-sufficient with their intellect and with the ability to reason that they found a way to have no need to be saved, no need for a Messiah anymore. And so Handel would walk around and he would hear people talking about how self-sufficient they were and how reason was now the new kind of God. And they would say, well, we don't really need the Bible. We don't really need a Messiah. But then he realized this: if we're so good and we're so self-sufficient and we're so reasonable and we can fix everything, then why are there still people who are poor? Why are there still orphans? Why are there still hospitals and people in debt? Why are there still the problems around our world? If we can fix everything within our own power, then tell me why we haven't done it. And then they'll say, oh, we just need a little bit more time. We need more discoveries and technology, and then we'll be able to fix it. And so he waits, and the problems still get worse and worse. Does it sound familiar to anyone? And so at this moment, Handel begins to realize that it's not just the people of Israel in Isaiah 39 living in minor, but it is all of England living in minor. And then he realized that it is the whole world living in minor. That everywhere in our world that there was people who needed a Messiah, and there was no way for them to fix their life on their own, and there was no way out. Their life was a perpetual minor chord and key. Hopelessness. And it's at this hopeless point that we keep reading, and we move from chapter 39 to chapter 40. And when everything seems hopeless, and when there's only a minor key being sung, the prophet Isaiah speaks out of nowhere and just breaks this into his moment of history, and he starts singing in major comfort. Comfort. And it is exactly what they needed to hear. And the prophet says, tell them that God has not left them. Tell them that there is still a God, and he is sending a Messiah, and the Messiah is on his way. Comfort people with these words. And it's almost like all of history since the fall of man in Genesis 3 lived in this perpetual minor kind of place until Isaiah spoke in chapter 40. And he said, for all of the people living with that kind of music, tell them that a new music has now come into this world. And it is exciting, and it's hopeful, and it is major. Tell them that there is hope. And so in the middle of the awful, the new hope comes. And Handel says, I'm going to create a oratorio out of that moment, the hope that comes into our world. And so he began to sing it, and he began to put it in. And so the very first words when he starts to play it are the words, comfort ye, comfort my people, right out of Isaiah 40. And there's no other way to do it except in major. And so he plays it in a tone and in a way that is uplifting and in a way that is soothing and in a way that people needed to hear. It feels like a big grandfather. This is how it feels to me. I had a great-grandfather, and he would come and he'd wrap his huge arms around me, tell me that he loved me. That's the way that this begins. Messiah begins. speaking into a desperate world the hope that's needed in major when they were living in minor. And we're going to play just a few seconds of it, and I'll tell you when to lower the volume, Bubba. But listen how soothing and how uplifting it is. And think about how much they needed this. They're in exile. They've lost everybody. And now this comes in to the people of Israel. Comfort my people. They needed that, didn't they? Nothing in this world could fix the problem of their minor situation except the comfort of a Messiah. His is the only way. Now, all oratorios need a hero. And in all of them leading up to this one, they had heroes like Samson and Esther and David. And just like them, the Messiah has a hero as well, except the hero of the Messiah is incomparably greater than all of the other heroes of all of the other songs. All of the other heroes were mere mortals with issues and flaws, like King David, who had the double sin of murder and then adultery as well. And oratorios were sung about those heroes. And then Handel says the Messiah comes. And he is the only one who has the ability to take somebody's life in minor and breathe into it major, to help restore joy into someone's heart that's been broken and shattered. And that person is going to be the hero of Messiah. He's going to be the hero, and it's not just like the other heroes, because he is not a judge, and he is not just a king, and he's not just a general, but this Messiah is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. He is the incarnate God. And what he did was God left his home in heaven in the incarnation and became man, meaning he put on the minor. Jesus became minor and lived the minor life so that you and I could live the major life. Jesus took it and he left and became minor for us. Isaiah goes on in chapter 53, and listen to the minor. Listen to the hero and what he endures as he becomes minor, because the major never would have come to our life. You would not have hope and you wouldn't have salvation if he had not taken on all of it. And this is how he did it. Listen, Isaiah 53. But he was pierced for our transgressions, minor. But he was crushed for our iniquities, minor. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, minor. But by his wounds, we are healed, major. And he takes it and he delivers to all of us this. When there was no salvation, he brings us the joy of our salvation. And it's something that we can only experience in major. That is only the first little bit of Messiah and me. I hope that your Messiah brings you the joy of major as well.
You've been watching the video sermon podcast of First Baptist Church of Marble Falls, Texas. Never miss an archived sermon or video posted to our YouTube channel by subscribing to it at youtube.com/FBCMFtube. For more information about our church and to hear an audio-only version of this sermon, please visit us online at fbcmf.org.